Welcome to today's webinar, The Anatomy of an Event, Essential Insights into an Award-Winning Event Team. And this is the first webinar in a brand new webinar series that's going to be released during 2025 called Best Foot Forwards, and it's brought to you by Event Footprints. I'm Vanessa Lovett, and today I am joined by Rob Curtis, who's founder of Event Footprints, and also Faye Carter, who is the Director of Experiential at Deloitte. And just before I ask them to introduce themselves, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourselves to us so that we have an idea of who's joining us, and we can answer your questions in a more tailored way when we come to answer them live at the end of the webinar. So we're going to push a poll live to you now. And this question is really simple. What's your primary goal for attending this webinar? So we've given you 5 options. Pick the one that resonates most closely with you. And then when we come to answer the questions live at the end, we'll know who we've got on the webinar with us. But we're going to crack straight into the webinar today. So Rob, could you introduce us first to you? Who are you and what do you do?
Thank you. Yeah, so my name's Rob Curtis. I'm the founder of Event Footprints. We set Event Footprints up 18 months ago. Been fortunate enough to work in events and specifically event technology for 20 years. I just found that there was an opportunity to use technology to drive engagement and attendee experience at events, but also there was this opportunity to collect more data in terms of what our attendees do throughout the whole event lifecycle to measure the impact of live events. So that's what we did.
Data, huge challenge for I think everyone in the event sector right now, but an opportunity as well. And Faye, could you tell us about yourself?
Sure, I'm Faye Carter. I'm the Director of Experiential at Deloitte. I've been with the firm for almost 20 years, which is mind-boggling. I lead a team of 10 event managers who look after some of our major client-facing events that are connected to some of our go-to-market campaigns, as well as our partner and people experiences, so the partner meeting and all that sort of good exciting stuff. I also have some experience with corporate hospitality and sponsorship. So lead a very busy team.
Some quite high profile events that you mentioned there. And this was very much Rob's brainchild to bring Faye in to answer some questions, because last year your team won some really prestigious event industry awards. So congratulations on that. And that's why we wanted to find out more about what goes on behind the scenes. So let's talk about the team. And who's in the team? What does it look like? But critically, what do you think are the essential skills and the qualities that are needed to build a team as high performing as the one that you have?
Sure. So I think there's all of the sort of skills and attributes that you would expect from an events team. I've got in spades in my team, fortunately. So I've got people in my team who have got that really critical attention to detail, that sort of flexible and agile approach to changing demands. They're very aware of trends and what's happening in the market. They're commercially really savvy, they're organised, they're resilient, all those things that you would typically find in an events team. In terms of how I've sort of shaped the team into what it is today, I think it's probably three areas that I'd like to talk about today. I think one is having a really clear vision for the team and shaping our team vision around the firm's ambition. So really making sure that our vision ladders up to the overall strategy and ambition of our business. I think the second thing is making sure that we understood what our internal clients needed from us as a team. And in doing so, we've really sort of expanded the remit of the team. So we've sort of over the last few years really diversified our offer. So we've got logistics experts, we've got people who are more aligned to a sort of event producer type role. We have hospitality and sponsorship specialists. So we're no longer seen, I don't think, as a purely logistics team. We are a little bit, more broad than that now in terms of our offering. And I think that the third thing I'd like to talk about today is just about thinking about all of those different parts of the team and celebrating the ways in which each member of the team has a really unique part to play in the contribution to our overall vision. So I think that's
what would a celebration look like if you wanted to raise someone up and their successes, or the team at large? What does a celebration look like?
I think it's it's those simple things every week of recognising who is doing a brilliant job with maybe a difficult internal, stakeholder, or I think it's about saying thank you. I think it's recognising people's contribution in small ways that seem to go quite a long way to people.
So consistency and frequency.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think we need that in the event sector. We have these huge milestone moments.
Yes.
But actually that's not real life and day-to-day work, is it? When you have to just keep
that morale going and keep, yeah.
I loved something you said there around the team being seen as more than a logistics team. I think we might come back to that in the future because it's very pertinent right now in the event sector. But Rob, you've worked with the Deloitte team for some time now. What's different about working with the Deloitte team compared to others?
So I think there's a real eagerness across the team to learn and understand new technologies, and we're quite fortunate that we have a number of technologies on the roster. So every time that one of the Faye's team come to us, they're learning them, and obviously we're deploying them. So obviously that sort of educational piece is increased every time we deploy them. And I think it's about empowering them to understand what the tech does, so that when they're talking to their own internal stakeholders, they can feel confident about talking about tech. Because as we know, there are so many different platforms out there that it's hard to understand the nuances between them all. So I think there's that real eagerness and drive to learn the basics, the more around the benefits and what it actually can provide the event, without going into too much of the intricacies and the technical details of the widget.
Learning enough to be dangerous.
Yeah,
I think that's what we want to see in teams, successful event teams as well. And then Faye, thinking about you as a leader, and how you have evolved in your role as well, and 20 years is incredible, and congratulations on your promotion to director level last year, which is a phenomenal achievement at Deloitte. But how have you built your own career alongside the career of the teams and the growth of the team beneath you? How have you made this work for you too?
I mean, and thank you for your words of congratulation around the promotion. It was for me personally quite a poignant moment in my career, and something that I'd worked really hard, to achieve. And I think how I sort of made that happen was firstly gaining the support from some of our senior leaders who really recognise and understand the value of events. I think that really was critical to me. I also, we talked earlier on the first sort of question around making sure that our events and our vision for the team really ladders up to that overall strategy of the business. And it's making sure that is really evident in all of the events and all the deliverables that we work against. And, fundamentally, I had to build a business case for the reason why I felt that a director needed to lead this function now in this division. I illustrated how my role had really evolved and developed. And I used this to my advantage and sort of leveraged that evolution of the role to sort of set myself apart, really.
So business case was a term
really
you used
critical.
there.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to come back to that as well in a moment. But also, how do you create the environment for your team to feel motivated and to thrive in as well?
So I think, again, sort of not to repeat myself too much, but an environment where everyone feels valued and recognised for their own individual contribution to the vision. But there's also a big part of what I try to do with my team is to encourage them to develop themselves. And if that means that they look for alternative secondment opportunities, we're lucky enough to work in an environment where there's a massively broad church of different roles at Deloitte. And so if they feel that they could gain in terms of personal development by moving out of the team, then I've facilitated that in the past, and I've created opportunities for people to explore, with other parts of our clients and markets department, or all sorts of different parts of the business, and then to come back with those, with those lessons that they've learned over 6 months or 12 months.
Probably helps grow the team as well in ways that you would not necessarily expect.
Yeah, exactly. But I think, in my experience, the biggest thing that sort of motivates a team is trust.
Yeah.
And again, this is very much in line with the rest of the firm.
Yeah.
We are trusted to work in ways that suits us, that suits the client and suits the internal client as well. And if that means that we're working from home 60% of the time, 90% of the time, 100% of the time, it varies from week to week.
Yeah.
And to have that trust in people to do really good work in the hours that they want to do that good work, in the environment that they want to do it, that to me really motivates the team.
And again, especially in the world of events, when you have these acute moments in time where you do have to be in a certain place at a certain time on point, you need that balance where there is that flexibility and trust around as well. And Rob, question for you as something as an extension of the events team, because the relationship between consultancy and in-house corporate event team is such a sort of it's a delicate, very nuanced relationship. So for you, what's been different about working with Faye? Because you guys have built up an incredible relationship. You can see it. Like, you're only getting a tiny snapshot of it here, but these guys are mates. So how's this developed and what's it been like from your experience?
Yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to work with Deloitte for many, many years, even before the birth of Event Footprints. And I think as a supplier to the events industry, I think one of the areas that any supplier wants to get to is that kind of trusted advisor status. And I think that's across any industry. And I think it's probably more prevalent and more critical in events because there are those moments in time where it's got to happen.
It's sink or swim, isn't it?
It's sink or swim,
Yeah.
These peaks and troughs. So I think and I hope Faye agrees, that we've got to this point where we over the years and some of the products and services we've offer, we've got to that trusted advisor status. And I think you mentioned there on a personal level, we don't talk huge, that regularly, but when we do, we often talk about our personal lives before we talk about our business lives. So our family, our kids are a similar age, holidays, and so it's just nice to have that personal relationship in addition to the business.
It's a really
one.
holistic relationship.
And actually, we've known each other for longer than the beginning of obviously Event Footprints. I've known you since before iPads and iPhones because I remember the little touch voting pads back in the day. So we were both showing our age, unfortunately. But to see that sort of development of the technology, but also as you as a professional has been incredible. So
and helps with that trust.
Yeah, exactly.
As well. Yeah. So it's actually the trust extends beyond the internal team, but to the entire supplier team as well, which we are going to also come to shortly. But I do just want to pick up on this point around the team providing more than just logistics, and I don't want to diminish the importance of logistics because my goodness, this industry would not exist without the world-class levels of logistics, and this term business case that you also used as well there. So what would you say have been the really quite critical things from taking that perception of the team from being a team that delivers things to a team that actually really contributes to the business's success? Are there a couple of things you might be able to pick out?
The environment that I'm in is the guys that I work for like numbers.
Okay.
Let's be clear about it. And so making sure that we put measurement at the very heart of our event design, it shouldn't have been a new thing, but actually over the last few years we've grown in terms of maturity when it comes to measurement. And I think that really has been a very, very powerful tool for us to be able to illustrate the power of in-person events. If you're trying to motivate a team, bring an internal team together, understanding the sentiment and the feeling of that team before the event, during the event, after the event, being able to measure that impact has been really, really valuable to me as an individual to build my case, but also to build the case for how important events are and how important the team are. And so obviously Event Footprints have hugely helped in that department.
Amazing.
So a measurement would be the big thing for us.
I remember when we spoke about a specific project last year, and they sent us the brief, and we were talking about the event, and I just kept saying, well, why is it being put on? You know, what is the core reason of this event happening? And if you're asking those big sort of high level questions, you then really makes you think about actually what is the business outcome that we want from putting this event on. And that event might be an internal event, or it might be a client in industry event, which is more brand exposure and more sales and marketing focused. And I remember this particular event was an internal event, it's a partner event, and it was all about connection and collaboration, different business units and different industries connecting and talking to each other, with an opportunity then that they're well informed, that they can upsell and cross-sell different services. So I think when you were asking those big high-level questions around why are you putting the event on, you know, what if you're going to look at 3, 6, 9 months down the line, what is the outcome that you're looking for, and how do you measure that? And I think that's kind of some of the key questions.
So I'm very much enjoying that you've got one of your suppliers knowing inside out the point of an event, thinking about the outcomes, the objectives, and what the long-term reason for running the event is. So how do you foster that collaboration across the whole event supply chain, Faye? Because you must have quite a chunky event supply chain.
We do. I think you've sort of touched on it already, really, Rob, particularly around that event, which I know exactly the one that you're talking about. And we're lucky enough that that particular event has given us that sort of exposure when it comes to industry awards and that kind of thing. And that was 27 Unlocked, which was our partner event at Excel back in September 23, it would have been. And I think that the beauty of that particular event was that there was a really, really clear objective and purpose of the event. And that was about better equipping our partners to have more confident conversations in the market. It was really, really simple.
And where did that direction come from?
Straight from the top, straight from our CEO. And it was a sort of a golden nugget of like, that's exactly what we needed. And we all sort of scribbled it down, and it was our North Star for the whole project. And if we were thinking of ways that we could shape the agenda, thinking of different experiences and activations that we could introduce, we always drew it back to how is this going to equip our partners to have more confident conversations in the market. And if it didn't get in the plan. Exactly. So I think having that really clearly defined objective really, really helps. And in some situations, there isn't a particularly clearly defined objective. And so we try to coach our internal stakeholders to really, crystallise what is the point, what is the purpose of running this show. And I think that the sort of second really important thing, aside from having that sort of North Star, is making it clear to all of the experts, be it the internal experts that we've got within Deloitte that help make these big shows happen, but critically to our third parties, is making sure that they understand what their individual contribution is to that North Star. And that's really, really key. And that's sort of where that really rich collaboration happens, when everyone knows what they're sort of on the hook for, basically.
I like that. Quite right too. And you've obviously nurtured and built great relationships with the senior leadership through your tenure of being there, and no doubt through some very specific initiatives that you would have done to build those relationships. What advice would you give to somebody who perhaps doesn't yet have those relationships with the senior stakeholders, but needs to get more clarity, needs to get that real what's the point of this event? Any advice you might be able to offer?
Could you repeat? Sorry,
yes,
could you repeat the question a minute?
So, if you don't have a great relationship yet with your senior stakeholders, the individuals in the business who want you to run a show for some reason, and you're not getting crystal clear guidance from them on what the point of the show is, what would you do to try and get that clarity from the senior leadership?
I think it's about sort of opening up that conversation with them as early as you possibly can, and asking them, look, what does success really look like for you? And talking to them about how we can track things much better than we ever could.
Nice.
And so really trying to sort of speak their language, trying to sort of mirror what what they're saying, and sort of getting that personal, relationship and that very human connection started. And to go back to what we were talking about earlier around trust, it's about gaining that trust from that person, and me asking all of those really quite difficult probing questions is only going to better the outcome.
Absolutely, such a good point.
It's not just about me being a little bit difficult or any member of my team being a bit difficult, because to be really honest, there are a number of events that happen year in, year out. And again, in an organisation like ours, sometimes it's quite difficult to shake up the status quo and to question why we're doing things in a certain way. And so it's a case of sort of bringing your experience to bear, and, again, we talked very briefly earlier around talking about logistics is not going to get you around the table, unfortunately. And again, to your point, it is not to diminish the value of logistics, because if that doesn't work, these things don't happen. But similarly, we need to adjust our style to start talking about the strategy and how this event ties into that strategy and will enable business growth, for example, or better internal collaboration. It
makes total sense. And I guess also, Rob, from an extended supplier event supply chain perspective, you need that point of clarity too. What am I on the hook for?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to know that, don't you?
And I think the other point there as well is that there are going to be different stakeholders involved with an event program or delivery of an event that will have different needs and wants. So it's about finding out what those are and making sure that they're achieved and, as you said, measurable against.
And something else you said there, Faye, which I'd love your thoughts on, Rob, that we can measure more now than we could many years ago. I mean, significantly more. And actually, there's probably a little bit of education needed around that too. Rob, do you find that is something that you have to contend with a little bit, with getting this message across of how much more can be measured now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes down to, the innovation in technology and around the platforms where, whether they're registration, apps, badging, all of this technology is being innovated all the time. And with that there's more data to be able to capture. And I think, whilst it's important to measure attendance rate, survey completions, there is so much more in that whole event ecosystem that we can capture and measure upon. And it's always going to improve and increase as well, as with innovation as we go.
Let's move on to technology then, because I've definitely picked up that the team is very tech enabled, which is awesome and wonderful and brilliant to hear. So a couple of questions for both of you, I think, around technology. And the main one is, how do you get the teams to feel confident and competent and just capable to actually put the right technology to use in the right place, in the right way, at the right time, to know which the right one might be. There's so many different layers to this now. So what happens from an internal perspective, Faye?
We just straight away get the experts in, to be honest with you.
I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm laughing. Perfect answer.
But it is true. It's recognising that this is your, to coin a phrase, bread and butter, that this is what you do and you're brilliant at doing it. And I think that the real value that we get from Event Footprints is that sort of one consultancy with multiple, technology partnerships that you can draw on. And I think critically, again, it's about asking those really probing questions. How is this technology going to improve the audience experience? How is it going to promote more engagement? What will we measure? What's the point of measuring this particular thing? What story are we going to tell with this data once we've got it? How's the dashboard going to look? It's making sure that, again, we've got that really clearly defined early on.
So you're getting drilled with all these very good questions that are absolutely the right questions. What do you do with these questions to make the teams be able to succeed?
Yeah, I think there's an acknowledgement first and foremost that not every event is going to have the same budget or the scale to be able to have all the latest tech out there. So I think there's an acknowledgement that actually there are ways to create a high level of engagement and interactivity and a good level of data collection with some quite simple messaging, polling, Q&A tools out there.
Yeah.
But then we can scale up if we need to for flagship events where there is more engagement required and more measurement capability required. So I think there's that, as Faye alluded to, we're quite fortunate that we have a number of different technologies on the roster that can either be combined and integrated fully together throughout the whole event life cycle, or individual technologies that can be deployed as standalone tools.
Okay, great. I'm going to come back to integrated because that's always a hot topic of conversation. But you mentioned dashboards. What could the dashboard look like, Faye? And I think this is a really great question. And to your point, Rob, there's no one size fits all to this. But what is possible when it comes to dashboarding for an event these days? What does it mean? What is an event dashboard, firstly? And what's possible?
Yeah, sure. So again, through our partnership and relationship, as we've learned a lot as we've evolved throughout the first 18 months, and we started doing the projects at the end of 2023, and I was very conscious that we were building these dashboards, and there was so much data in there. It was almost a little bit overwhelming, and I thought to myself, we need to, as an organisation, empower event ops people or even marketeers around enabling them to build a story around what the data means. Right. So we spent some time at the start of 2024 building a methodology around this process. So we identified 4 pillars of event measurement.
Okay.
One which was, how do we utilise tech and data to measure brand value? How do we utilise the tools to measure attendee value, the idea that people can go to an event, they can connect, they can contribute and they learn. How does it contribute to business value? Yeah. And the final pillar was event execution. And within that sort of pillar, if you like, it's not just around how our internal stakeholders felt the event had gone, but also that's where we pull in things like sustainability metrics and DEI objectives and DEI measurement as well. So with that sort of those 4 pillars, we're able to sort of help organisations build this narrative around what these dashboards actually mean. And there are certain, not all those 4 pillars are useful for every event.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, first and foremost, it's about the attendee experience. And actually, if attendees getting value from our events and we can measure that successfully, that's still probably the number one. I think when it comes to business value, that's kind of the golden chalice. Within sales and marketing led events, it's actually easier to measure because you've got sales and marketing data to capture that, and we can pull that into our dashboard. With internal events, it's actually slightly difficult because
a little less tangible. Yeah.
But then that said, obviously that event that we were talking about earlier, the critical sort of one of the objectives of that event was to promote connections being made within all of our different businesses. And actually through the smart wearable technology, we were able to track that people were creating those connections between our different business units. And so I think arguably of your 4, the pillars for that particular event, it did have brand value. I mean, every brand experience, in my view, has brand, it contributes to the brand value. It did have that, the technology did have that sort of audience value because, there were quirky things on that badge that would light up to make sure that you were going back into your session, those sort of visual prompts that supported the audience experience or polling or all the different
quite
aspects.
Engaging, isn't
Absolutely,
it? When something's flashing on your
exactly. And the sort of the event value, it was so valuable. The registration process was so much neater, cleaner, more efficient, and that sort of the execution of the event was improved hugely. So. Even though that was an internal facing event, you could see the business value from it because people were making those connections, which ultimately makes us perform better as one firm when we've got those strong connections between the different businesses.
And helps you communicate the impact of the event upwards
exactly
as well. I said I was going to come back to integrations, Rob, because I know this is a huge challenge for the sector, because you've got 10 people in your team, Faye. I doubt any of them consider themselves integrations experts, and neither should they, because they are event experts, they are really different things.
Yeah.
So, Rob, what's your role in integrating all this data, or pulling data in? You said sales and marketing platforms, for example, there, or it could be event tech platforms, or I'm sure CRM platforms, all sorts. What's your role in all this, and how does that facilitate Faye's team?
Sure. So we've built over the last year skills capability to be able to integrate event tech platforms across that way to support the whole event lifecycle. And that might be technology that a client buys from us and we deploy, or it might be they might have an incumbent supplier. We've still built that capability to integrate that technology together. What we're doing around sort of the data and insights piece, based on our experience of last year, typically we were taking event data about the whole event lifecycle and building these dashboards post-event.
Yeah.
And working on some of these large-scale events in the autumn, I was thinking that there's an ops and logistics component where clients are asking for all these reports all the time. We've actually, we're building a product called Event Stride. And what Event Stride is designed to do is be a single unified data platform that spans from the start of the event right through the whole event life cycle, so that the client, the agency, whoever, has got a single view, customized dashboard of the information that they want and their stakeholders want across that whole piece. And so we're not just integrating technology that way, but we're pulling it into live, custom, configurable.
And this would always be custom for an organisation?
Not necessarily. So the vision is that we are going to have a templated approach as well. So we've actually got one of the Deloitte events coming up in June. We're actually trialling this approach on.
Cool.
And there's some other events that we got in the spring where we're doing it live. So
very cool. So Faye, what would you guys do without Rob?
Honestly, I really actually don't know. I mean, just on the point of integration, when I hear the word integration,
do you get the chills?
A little bit, yeah. Because, and I think any sort of, if I could give any advice to anybody in a similar position to me that wants to engage more with event technology firms like Event Footprints and use technology, to measure and to enhance the experience, just bring IT on. Bring a consultant in, but also make sure that you leave so much time for the integration piece in my mind, the integration piece from an IT point of view, because as many of our viewers, listeners will relate, I sit in an environment where it's very heavily regulated and locked down, and there's lots of security hoops that we need to jump through. So it's making sure that you've given yourself lots of time
Outstanding advice.
Engage your IT
teams.
teams.
Back you up on that.
Yeah.
I think no matter if you think you need 3 months, you probably need 9.
6.
All right, let's move on to sustainability.
Yeah.
Because this is, I know, a topic that, in fact, I should have said earlier in this, please send questions in. If you haven't been already, send your questions in, and I'm sure sustainability will prompt a few questions in the chat as well. How do you build this in to your overall, there's a sharp intake of breath.
Big subject.
But how are you doing 2 things? Firstly, enabling the team as well, because fundamentally we're really keen to hear how the team are being enabled through your leadership. But how are you also making this something of a shared priority? Because it's not just down to your 10 crew, is it? No. It's a much bigger responsibility.
Yeah, and honestly, this is such a big topic that it probably deserves its whole webinar on its own. And it's something that I'm really passionate about. Unfortunately, 100% of my team are really passionate about it as well. So I could talk at length about sustainability. So firstly, the one thing I will say is actually at Deloitte, we are so committed to sustainability that we are obligated to weave in a sustainability objective into our performance reviews, which irrespective of which part of the business you sit in.
So every single employee?
Yeah. Yeah. So they've got to have at least one personal performance objective that is linked to the firm's broader net zero
That's great.
ambitions. So there is a piece there around we are operating in this way. You need to be on the bus, on the electric bus. So there is that anyway. Secondly, to coin a phrase from a friend of mine who is also in the industry, we don't design badly, like climate heavy events and then try to sort of offset them afterwards.
Yes,
Do you see what I mean?
yeah.
So what we do now is put sustainability at the very heart of event design as opposed to an afterthought. So it's a whole way of thinking and a design principle. We also track all of our decisions on an event by event basis using our own dashboard that we've developed internally around sustainability. So what we try to do is track the decisions we're making. It sort of spits out a score at the end of that event, and if we score, for example, 70%, then, as I said earlier, many of our events are cyclical. So the next time round, we try to score 80% or 85%, and we use that tracking sort of principle as a way to make improvement. We have talked a lot today about bringing in the experts, bringing in the technology experts. I bring in the sustainability experts. So we have a team called the World Climate Team within Deloitte, and we liaise with them particularly on our real milestone flagship events, the ones that have got the biggest carbon footprint, because let's be honest, events, unfortunately, they do. So we bring the experts in to talk about how we can make better choices and really put those design principles, when it comes to sustainability, really firmly in place. And beyond that, when we think about the supply chain, so we're now asking our suppliers to have their own science-based targets, and we're building that into our master services agreements with our suppliers. So what we're looking for are people in our supply chain that take sustainability as seriously as we do.
Yeah.
So that is a very clear signal to the wider business environment that this isn't an after, this is the way that we now operate.
Absolutely.
So there's a number of ways that we look at this.
I do really applaud the concept of, if we're 70% score one year, then we just have to get better next year. It's not a case of 0 to 100 overnight, because that's not realistic, and I think it's just progress. Fundamentally, things have to keep getting better, and I'm sure this is something you see on other events as well. As well outside.
I will just mention one thing as well, that whilst I look after a central team, there are events that happen with outside of our team, and so there might be varying degrees of intelligence when it comes to making events as sustainable as they possibly can be. So we issue a lot of advice to other people in the business who are running maybe smaller events that they perhaps don't need our event management sort of support on. So there's documents like the Event Sustainability Guide, there's checklists, there's, we work very closely with our venue finding team, with BCD, our venue finding team, and there's obligations on their part to secure venues that have got really strong sustainability credentials. So whilst we can't control everything, we are putting in place some of those processes to try to improve things where we can.
Outside your immediate victim.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. There's a lot of initiatives there, and it's progress. I think that's the thing that we all really want to make sure is happening across the sector. That is actually the end of my questions for you right now, but we have one more question for you, our audience, which we would like to push a poll live now, and this is around your biggest challenge in measuring event success. And there are 4 options available for you to select from here. So again, pick the one which resonates most with you. And what we're going to do now is join you live, because we wanted to sit together and be able to do this in person, to be together, I think, more than anything. And we've had a really lovely morning getting to know one another as well. But we're going to now join you live from different places. So there'll be a switch over from this pre-record to live, and that's going to take place now, and we'll answer your questions live.
And here we are. 2 out of 3. We had Faye with us until approximately 60 seconds ago. And somehow Faye's disappeared. So we are just going to hang on. Sorry, we're just going to keep going. Oh, she's back. Just like that. Faye, we lost you briefly. You just can't beat events, can you? For a little bit of adrenaline from time to time.
Just so frustrating. Apologies. Hopefully you guys can hear me and see me, and apologies again if I drop out, but I'm using my personal hotspot. So
we can hear you, you sound great, we can see you, you look great, all is well in the world.
Good stuff.
Whilst we've got you, I am going to put a question to you straight away because it's been really upvoted, and we have got time for a couple of questions, and hopefully we'll get to see those poll results after this question. So, Faye, the question is, you have built an impressive team at Deloitte. I think we can all agree on that, it's undisputed. But can you tell us a bit about the different backgrounds from your team members? And
Sure.
Who have you got? Where did you find them, and how did you bring them all together?
One of my sort of personal favourite topics is talking about my team because I'm exceptionally proud of all of them. We are a mix of quite a diverse sort of background of people. So I have a number of people in the team who have got a lot of corporate experience, so have come from other professional services firms, have come from banks or law firms, and they bring their own set of, skills and experience with them. But critically, I've also have a number of people who are ex-agency in my team, a number of people who, one lady in particular comes from a venue sales background, which is quite different to others in the team. We have people who come from a sort of event producer type background, exhibitions, learning, marketing, marketing and project management. So it's a really sort of broad church of different experiences and capabilities critically, and that's what makes the team so sort of successful, I think, now, because we've got that diversity of thought and experience. And that
makes a lot of sense. And
valuable.
On paper, perhaps isn't the most obvious approach, but actually in practice really works, which is excellent.
It started, I think our first hire was somebody from first hire outside of the typical event manager that comes from another professional services background, which was always what we wanted sort of 10 or 15 years ago. That was it was our default to go for somebody that had that sort of partnership experience. But our first hire was a lady called Becky, who she might even be joining this today, and she came from an agency background, and there was a real difference in the way that she viewed sort of stakeholder management and almost customer service, and that just really set her apart from others in the team, and we just started to really see the benefit of having different people from different backgrounds, and it sort of went from there.
Awesome. Should we get those poll results up and see what our audience have told us about themselves? So if those could be shared for everybody, that would be fantastic. And there are quite a few questions that have come through. I'm afraid we're definitely not going to get through them all today, but let's see what we've got here. So biggest challenge, but it's a standout winner around providing evidence of event impact and ROI to stakeholders. So this is something I know that both of you have worked tirelessly actually on together to make happen. Rob, I'm going to come to you on this one first for some thoughts. Are you surprised to see that one at the top, so strongly at the top of the list as well? I would say actually 25 against the next one being 8. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the problem that we have in our industry is that there are multiple stakeholders in an event. You've got sales, marketing, ops people, and they've all got those different needs and wants, as we mentioned on the webinar. I think what you are able to do certainly around the tech and the metrics that we look to capture, you can almost bucket them into metrics that measure marketing ROI or help with operations. And I think if you can look at your stakeholders and pull them into these sort of groups, if you like, then create this sort of measurement framework that will apply to probably and tick a lot of boxes for 80% of your stakeholders. You're not going to, you might miss the 20%, but I think that's probably a way to approach it. And I think, as I said, everybody's got different needs and wants, and I think we have to make sure that we hit those metrics for, as Faye talked about, what is the ultimate reason why we're putting this event on, and then sort of filter it down from there.
Makes sense. And Faye, what do you reckon? Surprise for you to see it that high, or not a surprise at all to see that?
Not much of a surprise, if I'm honest with you. I think Rob is just
always going to be a challenge, or at least for the time being too. I'm going to ask the next most voted question to you, Faye, because I think this is a really interesting one actually, which is, what does operational efficiency look like? And this is the bit that I really love. And the question is, what steps do you take before making a major decision? And I'm sure that's not a short answer, but to the best of your ability, what would be a short answer?
So I think operational efficiency in a team like ours is sort of twofold, really. I think firstly, when it comes to each project and each event, it's about the obvious stuff of making sure that things are delivered on time, on budget, rather, that things meet their objectives. That kind of operational efficiency is important to us as a team. That's what we're measured on in terms of our performance every year. In terms of as a team, our efficiency as a team, operating as a team, I think going back to what we were talking about in the webinar earlier, is around making sure everyone in the team really understands their role towards the vision of the team, understands that they have their own unique set of skills and capabilities that all are of equal importance across the board. And it's really making sure that everyone sort of understands the vision and understands their role in that. In terms of the steps that I take before making major decisions, and this is something that I would talk to my team about as well, and they know this inside out, it's understanding that if you make one decision, what the impact has in terms of that sort of ripple effect. And I think for anyone watching this webinar in an events role, which I would imagine is 99% of the people that are watching this, they will probably relate to the fact that if a stakeholder requests something or asks to change something, they don't necessarily always understand the implications of that change, certainly in terms of how the budget might shift, or in terms of just the logistical knock-on effect of making that particular decision. So it's making sure that everybody in the team, in the project team, understands the impact of decisions, and really making sure that they're well thought through and qualified before those.
I think you've described that with incredible diplomacy, that it's not always fully understood what the knock-on impact might be of requests that are made, because in reality I know sometimes it has us with our heads in our hands.
Exactly.
But communication, I guess so much of this comes down to communication. And Rob, you must see that as well across other businesses. I'm quite sure that's not unique to Deloitte to have to handle and manage that. But any other insights into what other steps are taken in other businesses when it comes to making major decisions?
Yeah, I think as Faye said, there's always people who always want more. They always want to deliver the best events possible, and obviously the tech play an important part of that. But it's about of course, scope creep, and actually it's the knock-on effect in terms of budget, but also the impact in terms of what it has to the suppliers. And I think one of the key things is, as a supplier, you need to be able to turn around and say, no, we can't deliver that because it might impact X, Y, and Z, and therefore we don't want to take that risk, for example. And I think a lot of as we all know in event planning is we always got to eliminate any risk possible, because the first and foremost most important thing is that these experiences go seamlessly as possible.
Great. I'm going to ask one more question, and then I think we better wrap up because we have run over a little bit already. But I can see we've still got a good group online, and this one's about sustainability. And I did suspect that sustainability would prompt a couple of questions, and this is quite, I think, a question a lot of folks are asking right now across the event sector, which is how do you measure event sustainability? Do you have a tracker? Do you do this ad hoc? Do you use a specific company for this? So I think the first question probably goes to Faye, and then I have a follow-up question, which is, so Rob, how can you work this into dashboards that we talked about during the actual session as well? So Faye, first over to you. How are you actually doing this measurement?
So we've got a sort of two approaches really that we use. One is where we're working on major milestone projects that arguably have slightly bigger budgets and allow us to outsource the sustainability sort of reporting and all the metrics that come with that reporting. So we do use a third party for that, and they're along the journey with us throughout the whole planning process. And at the end of the event, there's a really, really in-depth report that is sent to us post-event with, you know, the good, the bad, the ugly kind of thing. And it really sort of highlights the areas where we made some really good decisions, the areas where we could make better decisions in future, and gives us that sort of that advisory piece that we need to continue to make improvements. But not every single event that we work on has the luxury of having that sort of additional budget to spend on that, you know, that really in-depth sustainability reporting. So like I said in the webinar earlier, we have developed our own very high-level dashboard, and that goes into asking the event manager, probably, I think it's between 12 and 15 questions. It's, as I say, it's pretty high level, and it talks about the choices that we made in terms of venue, the choices that we made in terms of transport for delegates, the choices that we made in terms of food. You know, it goes into quite a lot of detail across the board, but it's at quite a high level, and it's a sort of self-reflection piece really, and it's, as I say, it's something that my operations lead in the team has developed. We've been running it now for about 18 months, so we're getting to the point now where we can start to compare our percentage sort of scores year on year to some of our annual events, and we can see where we're making better decisions, and that then in turn gives us a greater score as the output.
Brilliant. Rob, how do we see this in the big picture across the whole of the event impact?
Yeah, so we look at event sustainability as one of our 4 pillars of event execution. What we don't do is capture necessarily that data. We can incorporate that data into our dashboards, into our visualizations. But the one that we're hearing a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of the people on the webinar today will be familiar with, is the Trace platform by Isla. And again, don't know too much about it, but I know that from talking to a lot of clients and agencies that both use it, it's a great tool to measure and benchmark those sustainability metrics if you want a purpose-built tool to do that. And as I said, we can pull data from Trace into our dashboards, but that's the one we see a lot of people using.
I think there are a few tools out there like that now. Another one that I've heard of is Event Decision. I haven't used it, so not a plug for any of these, but there are ways and means and tools out there. So have a good look. Right. We are going to wrap up so that we don't run over. For anybody who's kindly given us their time to come and join, there are actually 10 unanswered questions. So we will absolutely look at those and try and do some post-session answers, which we can send out to those of you who've joined as well. And really importantly, we would love to invite you all to come to our next webinar. So the next in the series of the Best Foot Forwards webinars, which Event Footprints are putting on. And this is going to be with the wonderful Victoria Matey. If you haven't heard of Victoria, she is an event psychology advisor. And we're going to be talking about why attendees do what they do, which isn't always what we want them to do, and the psychology behind great experiences. And that's going to be on March the 12th. So put it in your diary. I think there's a link in the chat as well that you can join us with now. But must finish by saying a huge thank you to Faye for sharing so candidly and preparing so diligently and just being so generous with all of the learnings that you've had and bringing those to the audience as well. So thank you so much. And Rob, thanks for bringing it all together as well. We'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much.